how did you meet Dr. Phil?
Became a life coach and a mental health professional myself. When the fit hit the shan backstage, I was the guy. I ended up working for Dr. Phil for almost 20 years.
So how do you deal with those negative environment but still finds happiness?
You're in a relationship with your anxiety, and you stand there crying at the door, banging on it, telling it to open. You're wasting time. They decrease stress response. Yosuke, what happened inside your mouth?
Alright, welcome to Be Frank Podcast Episode 9. Please that podcast that we invite guests to expert to be as frank as possible so you and I can learn, inspire to grow and to see the possibility of your career. Today we welcome life coach and mental health professional Anthony Haskins, who used to be the resource director for Dr. Phil for 18 years. I can't wait to learn about the show and about the mental health. How are you? Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thank you, Yosuke. Thank you for inviting me on. It's always exciting and an honor and privilege to talk about what I'm passionate about, which is how to make the most of every circumstance and situation in your life and how to become who I think you're destined to be, which is oftentimes far more than what we think we're capable of. So it's exciting, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you so much for coming in here, and then I'm so excited to learn about so many different things from you. And I saw like a lot of social media posts you're doing, and then also your website, and then like there's so much I want to learn. So those people, listeners who doesn't know about you, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Anthony Haskins. I'm an Oklahoma guy, born and raised. Got educated here at Oklahoma State, went to law school at SMU, and through kind of a destiny of circumstances, I ended up working for Dr. Phil, the TV host, for almost 20 years as his resource director. And in that time, I became so impassioned by mental health, by human potential, and personal development that I became a life coach and a mental health professional myself. I started a practice. I started teaching and training at inpatient treatment programs, some of the top inpatient treatment programs in the country. I've instituted treatment plans and helped them cultivate neuroplasticity protocols, which is how to change the brain in both behavioral and emotional function. So I know that kind of it starts to sound like Charlie Brown's parents, wah, 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 but it's kind of a more modern approach to how to help yourself adapt to the pressures and circumstances of day-to-day life.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, like, it's like a brain. I would say like 3 or 4 years ago, if you ask me like about mental health or therapy or something like that, I mean, like, well, the only weak people goes those kind of things. So I was that in the mental stage, but now like I'm big into therapy and then reading self-help books and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think at some point in every person's life, you need an objective point of view. Right. You need to be able to see yourself from above. You have to see what you're doing and figure out why. And then start to figure out more, what is it that you want? And you can shape the way you experience the world. You may not be able to change every circumstance in your life, but you can change how you interact with those circumstances. And in other words, you create your experience in this world. And it's hard to shift your mind and really move into that point of view. But when you do, something clicks and you have freedom. And that's why I call my practice Set You Free, because I think we live in a prison of our own making. The door is wide open. We have the key. We can open it. We can come right out and live the life we want. We can have the experience of our life that we want, despite any tragedies, traumas, abuses, the things that have held us back, and even some of the deeper insecurities and self-worth issues, and these things that they're prison bars that are of the own mind, that are of our own making. And the pathway out of it is oftentimes simpler than what you think it is. Like, problems are complex, they're multi-layered. The things that have happened, they're complex, they're intertwined, they're multi-layered, but the way out is oftentimes very simple. And so I think, I grew up in that same frame of mind. I had no idea what mental health even was. That wasn't even a topic for me. And when I was in college at Oklahoma State, I had a girlfriend at the time that loved watching Dr. Phil when he was on the Oprah show. And she would make me sit down and watch him. And I would basically roll my eyes, through the whole thing.
Right.
And then who's to know that fate would have me cross paths with him, and I would end up working alongside him and becoming, a practitioner in the same field.
That's awesome. So how did you meet Dr. Phil?
Well, okay. So when I went to Oklahoma State originally, I was interested in medicine. I had open heart surgery when I was 2.5 years old. And so I had the miracle of medical technology save my life. And so I was interested in medicine, and I was enrolled in the business school, and I was intending to go to medical school. But I had a law professor there named Andy Urich, and he really got my mind thinking. He kind of blew my mind in a way. And a lot of the way that I believed and the kind of foundation of what I was thinking kind of got blown up. And I got so interested in this idea of how to think and reading and expanding my point of view. So I ended up wanting to go to law school, and I knew I wanted to go to SMU in Dallas, Texas, and so that's where I went. I got accepted, and it was there that, at that time, Dr. Phil he owned a company called Courtroom Sciences, Inc. It was the #1 litigation firm in the United States. They had massive accounts with CBS.
So he was a lawyer?
3M. No, he's a psychologist.
Oh, okay.
But see, there's a regulation where lawyers and psychologists can't be partners. So they created a firm that had a consulting limb for law firms, where they would do jury consulting, trial consulting, and they would help plan the psychology of how to pick a jury, what images to show, what evidence to pursue, and how to present it, etc. So they were a consulting firm that was used by law firms, and that's how he actually met up with Oprah. When Oprah was being sued for the statements that she made regarding mad cow disease, I think she made some statements that some beef suppliers were upset at, and they sued her, and they hired Dr. Phil and his company to represent and help cultivate the trial strategy for Oprah, and that's how they met. And so when I was in Dallas and in law school, I had met his son, Jay, at law school. He was at law school the same time that I was at SMU, and we became friends. I didn't even know who he was, but we had met by chance, and we became great friends. And who knew he was Dr. Phil's son? I go to his house and meet his family, and Dr. Phil invited me into Courtroom Sciences, Inc., and I was around them and learning, and it was a fantastic experience. And so that's how I got involved with Dr. Phil, and they knew that I was not interested in practicing law after I had graduated, because Jay and I were friends, right? So he knew that, and so did his dad. And I had practiced as a third-year barred law student at the Public Defender's Office of Dallas County. I had clerked at a med malpractice firm here in Oklahoma City, and I knew that, I could make a career there. But it wasn't what I wanted to do. And realistically, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I had gone all this way. It's like I had gone the first part of my life, and I wanted to be an athlete, and I was focused on sports. And then I decided I had scholarship offers to play football, to run track. I was a state champion in the long jump in high school, 2 years, and I could have been an athlete. But when it was time to go to college, I decided I wanted to focus on learning, and I was ready to step off the playing field and start really figuring things out academically. And so I took a scholarship to Oklahoma State for academics and put sports aside. And then as I went through law school and I learned the law and I was practicing, it just still, I enjoyed it, but I didn't feel the passion for it. And so through happenstance and coming into Dr. Phil, when he was going to move from Dallas to Los Angeles to start his show, I got a phone call from him one day.
What did he say?
Hey, boy, I want you to come to Los Angeles. I would need you to be my resource director. We need to put together an advisory board, and we need to figure out what we're going to do with people once they're on the show and how we're going to help them. And I'd like you to come out and do that for me. And I said, yes, sir. And literally, I was on an airplane and headed to Los Angeles with everything I owned, which fit in a duffel bag.
Damn. So what's a resource director mean?
Well, the position expanded while I was there into many different areas, but essentially, this is what it came to be. Dr. Phil would take in interviews, and he would get vertical from parents and family members all the way down to neighbors and doctor's notes and files and everything. I mean, the amount of data that we got on families and guests was tremendous. And we'd have a book that not many people had access to, okay? Only Dr. Phil and the advisory board had access to, which was about, oftentimes 300 pages thick of data on the families that we had.
Like a family histories and all that kind of stuff?
Family histories, interviews with each family member, really trying to get a true understanding of what's going on in the system, in the family system, and with the dynamics of each person and how it's interplaying, so that you can really come up with a comprehensive way to resolve an issue. So it was really smart, very intelligent, and he treated it in a lot of ways, I think, like you would a law case, where you really want to get all the evidence out there and find out what's really going on in this situation. And so we would help gather up that data. We would go over it. And he had the chief of his advisory board was Dr. Frank Lawless, who wrote the book Retraining the Brain. He's one of the premier brain scientists alive today. He's a double diplomate in clinical and counseling psychology and has written over 17 best-selling books. He actually was put as my supervisor. I answered to him and to Dr. Phil, and that was it. And so we would go over every case and talk about it and create a treatment plan for them once they were gone from the show. And so, Dr. Phil would actually provide resources for his guests after they were on the show. And while I was there, in the 18 years that I was there, we provided over $33 million worth of resources for our guests after they've left the show. And so we would help come up with where, if they needed inpatient treatment programs, I vetted inpatient treatment programs. I'd find the best in the country. Where should we send these people? What do they need? What kind of therapy resources? And what Dr. Phil would call me is a curator of evidence-based therapies, because I from the advisory board that I was surrounded by. We were always in touch with the latest research and the most productive evidence-based programming for whatever situation a person was dealing with or a family was dealing with.
Gotcha.
So that was one limb. But then as we kind of did things, there was a comedian that used to do the audience warm-up stuff that was ha, 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 and kind of, it wasn't to the standard. It didn't fit, and everyone knew it, but no one really knew what to do. And I told Dr. Phil one day, I mentioned to him that I didn't think it was to his standard. And he said, okay, sounds like you're going to be our guy then. And so I said, okay. And so from that day on, I started going out into the audience, twice a day, 350 people saying, hey, welcome, this is what's going to happen. This is what we are. This is what we do. We're so glad you're here. And I would talk with them and interact with them and play and have fun with them. And then I'd introduce Robin, introduce Dr. Phil, and get off stage. And then I'd go sit next to Robin. I sat next to her during every show taping. So if you tune into Dr. Phil for the last, 10 seconds of the show, you'll see me every show. And then backstage after the show is over, I was the backstage intervention specialist. So anything that needed to happen backstage, I conducted that. So everybody says yes on stage, right? Like if Dr. Phil says, we're going to send you to get treatment at this dual diagnosis treatment center here, and this is blah, blah, blah. Are you willing to accept that help? And they go, uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then they get backstage and they go, no way. They like the reality hits them. They're like, I have to do this. I need to go take care of this problem. But we know that if you don't go directly from right now, that the chances of you going once you go home gets down below 20%. Oh. And so like I was there to intervene and make sure that people stayed with their commitment and did what they needed to do and go where they needed to go. And if there was any kind of crisis when the fit hit the shan backstage, I was the guy.
Huh. So so like you go backstage and then you convince them to go get the treatment, or like intervention wise?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that probably 80% of the people that said yes on stage would then try to wiggle out backstage. Okay. And so I was there to help get them back into the heart of their commitment, the reason why they said yes on stage, and what they needed to do for themselves.
Can you kind of like tell me an example?
Well, okay, let's say this. I mean, let's say that you have major family dysfunction, that your relationship with your wife is in crisis and your children are in a chaotic environment, and you happen to be abusing drugs or alcohol. And Dr. Phil kind of wakes you up and shows you on big screens what your life has been like, because we shot a lot of stuff, at home, and they would see what that was like, right, and see their dysfunction. And then Dr. Phil would talk to them, and he's so good at it. And, I got to see the whole thing. You get to see on TV a cut up version of what I saw on a daily basis. It's cut up, it's edited, it's put together, but like to see him in action with human beings is a phenomenal experience. And so he would get them where they needed to be, and then they'd say yes, and then they'd go backstage, and the pressure hits. What am I going to do? How am I going to? I need to fix this thing before I go. I need to go to my work. I need to do this. I need to do that. And I was there to remind them, look, how is your life working for you? If you don't do something about it right now, how is it ever going to change? Because if you want what you had yesterday, then do what you did yesterday. But if you want something different, you need to do different. You need to think different. You have to act differently. You need to make hard choices. And sometimes doing what's best is doing what's difficult.
Right.
And so I was there to help get into the heart of the matter and help them reignite that reason why they were there to begin with. Gotcha. And I got very good at it.
So what would you say, what percentage of people go through with it?
I would say 99%.
99%?
Very rarely did somebody not go. Oh. In fact, I became the guy that they sent to the toughest cases, celebs, etc. I became a referral source for interventions on people that were very defiant and had tons of resources, to where, it's how hard is it to convince somebody that has nothing that they need to go stay in a cozy place in a warm bed with three meals and services provided and massages. It's not as difficult than it is for somebody that has millions of dollars in resources and can do whatever they want and is well known and doesn't frankly need you. And so it depends on the situation, and not to say that if you don't have a lot that it's easy to convince them, because a lot of families are in that situation. But there are strategies, and I know strategies that work, that compel people into the treatment that they need in order to help themselves. And so I kind of became the guy that they sent to get people to do what was best for them.
So
interventions.
So the intervention.
Essentially.
So intervention. So would you? So I had a couple incidents. For example, I wanted to ask that I kind of had a friends or family member go through a drug addiction or a alcohol addiction, right? And it's kind of getting towards to affect a lot of different people, and then everybody who cares about that person wanted to kind of hold an intervention. But we just kind of decide to not to, because they have to decide if they wanted to get a treatment. So my question was, when do you know it's good to have an intervention, and then when do you know when it's not good to have an intervention, if that makes sense?
Well, I think it's good to have an intervention.
Period?
Period. Because it's not just about the person that has the problem. It's also about the family and the people that are affected by the problem. And so if you have a family member or a friend that is addicted, getting together with the people that can stand together and will stand firm in it and say, number one, you want to keep to the facts. Okay, so to prepare for something like that, you want to say, this happened on this date. You threw the lamp through the wall. You took off with the keys. It was clear that you were intoxicated and you drove anyways. That's a fact, okay? And then you say, this is how I felt about it. I felt hurt to the core. I felt betrayed. I felt lost. I felt like you didn't care about any of us. My heart was blown to pieces. And you explained this happened on this date. This is what went wrong. This is what you were doing. And then this is how I felt about it. And you go down the list and you talk about it, and you're able to get that off your chest as a family and express to them what their choices are doing to you. Okay? And you make it about you and about the choices that they're making. And then what you do is you don't want to do that intervention unless you have a plan as to what happens from here. Okay?
So do you tell them to go to rehab or go to therapy? Or
you don't tell them to. You ask them to. You say, look, it's clear. All we're asking first is for you just to sit with us and hear us. Okay? And you want to stay out of accusations and tones of trying to, manipulate and tear them apart. This is just about giving us the opportunity to sit down because we love you and we care about you and we want to share our thoughts and feelings with you. Okay? And if they're willing to do that, then you keep it to the facts. You tell them how you feel, and then you say, because of these things, we are asking for you to get help. And these are the resource choices that we have found for you. This one is a government provided resource for those that can't afford treatment, etc. And this one is if you want to do outpatient. We've heard that if you go to 90 meetings in 90 days and you get a sponsor and you stay with the program, that we've heard that they're successful. Do your research. Ask people, find out what works, okay? Right. My website has a lot of resources on it, anthonyhaskins.com.
Oh, I saw that, yeah.
And so you find out what works and you present that, okay? But then, now the third element, so the first is facts and feelings, okay? Not accusations, not you. This is what happened to me. This is how I felt.
Right.
Okay, number one. Number two is a plan. What to do now that we've identified that there is really a problem here, and that these are the things that were the problem that was created. Here is some resource options. And then third, this is what happens if you don't choose to get help. And this is the hardest part for families.
Yeah, because that person who's getting intervention might not believe it. No, that's not going to happen.
That's right. Yeah. And so what do? Now what you do is you have to create a situation that could potentially propel them into treatment. But it's, like I said, oftentimes the difficult choice to make. But here is the hard, fast truth in dealing with a sick person is that you have to make a very firm commitment to no longer participate in the problem. You will participate in any way, you will help in any way as long as they are in the solution. As long as they are getting help on the path to wellness, you can help them. You can give them food, you can give them resources, you can help them in every way. But as long as they're in the problem and you're helping, you're part of the problem. That's the definition of enabling, is rewarding bad behavior. That's the definition. If they are engaged in behavior that is not for their best health and wellness, and it's disintegrating not only them, but the family, each of you as individuals, then you have to decide that you're going to make the hard decision and not help them and participate in part of the problem. And that's a hard decision to make. And I know families that have had to kick someone out, and they lived on the streets. And sooner or later, they burn all the bridges. They burn all the bridges of people's couches that they can sleep on and people's homes, because this is what addicts do. If you've ever been in contact with an addict, if you ever have known one deeply entrenched in addiction or deep mental health, you know that what they do is they will manipulate and take and rob you of everything that you can, and they'll lie to you, and they do whatever they do because the reward mechanism in their brain has been hijacked to where they have to go and find a way to get what they need in order to feel okay. Because first you do drugs, and then the drugs do you. First you get high, and then you just are being done by the drug, and you're just doing it so you don't feel sick. You're just doing it to feel okay. And you get in this round robin where it's find the supply, be in whatever altered state of consciousness for however long it lasts, and then rob, steal, beg, whatever you have to do in order to get more of what keeps you okay. The reward mechanisms in the brain have been completely hijacked. And so oftentimes families and friends have to make a tough decision, which might mean that you don't participate in helping, even though it's what you deeply want to do, but it's not what's best for them. And I've seen it turn around to where they get tired of sleeping outside in the cold. And they come, and I will tell them that when they come back and they come onto your doorstep and say, please, can I have a meal? Please, can I have a shower? Please, I just need $5. That's your opportunity. You don't give them what they need. You get a commitment that they're going to do what they need to do for themselves, and then you help them. So if you are willing to go get the help, then I will help you. And it's heart-wrenching. This is not a fun situation. Yeah. It's not a fun situation, but people on accident, we do things that are for ourselves. Well-intended moms and dads and parents and friends, they go, well, it's just okay, sleep on my couch. Okay, here's $10.
Then you become the part of the problem.
You're part of the problem, and what you're actually doing is what makes you feel good. You think to yourself, oh well, at least they're safe. At least, and it's not what's best for them. It's what's best for you, actually. What's best for them is dealing with the natural consequences of the choices that they're making, so that they can come to a place where maybe they will wake up and make the decision. But not everyone will, let's say, and maybe they don't. Are you going to allow your own life and your own family to be ravaged because of the choices that they make? I think you have to make that tough decision. But I do find that more often than not, people will come around and they'll need your help.
Right.
And that's your opportunity to go, okay, let's go to this place. Let's go to this place.
They have to go through the tough place, but the people who want to help has to go through the tough place too. Then.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
That makes sense. Right. I mean, like anything you wanted to achieve in life and to grow, you have to sacrifice and go through the hard places.
Well, is it a sacrifice? I mean, look, one of my favorite authors, Joseph Campbell, says that the cave that you most fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek.
Huh.
As you approach those difficulties, as you approach your fears, the things that stand in the way of what you truly hope for and what you want, as you approach them, you see that you become something. And that something you become, nobody can ever take from you. That jewel that Joseph Campbell is talking about is something that is inside you that can never be taken away. And so that is the process of becoming and growing, is as you approach the difficulties. It's another one of my favorite authors, Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. He says, suffering ceases to be at the moment in which it finds purpose and meaning. So when you have something that you're suffering through, if you can find the purpose in it, if you can find meaning to it for you, and I'm not saying some global life purpose, some global meaning, I mean the small meaning in it. What is it in this situation that I am going to grow through? Like, for instance, you're training your sweet little pup, Hazel, who came running and leaped at me as I walked in. What a joy to have. I feel like dogs are angels with fur on them. They're like these little things that pick you up and make you feel good.
Yeah.
And what a joy. But if you're wanting to teach her to sit and stay, do you call her over and tell her to sit, and when she doesn't do it, do you kick her?
No.
Throw things at her? Tell her she's dumb and stupid?
No.
What's wrong with you?
No.
No.
Yeah.
We do that to ourselves.
Right.
We're trying to teach ourselves something. We're going through a difficulty, and what do we do to ourselves?
We kind of be hard on myself, I guess.
Yeah. We tear ourselves apart.
Yeah.
We and in some ways, we kind of grow up in this, especially in Oklahoma culture. It's like pull yourself up by the bootstraps, get tough, and I like that. It takes a certain amount of that to move through this world. People get all caught up with at least I think that, this is the way the world's meant to be. It's like, it's not, you're fighting gravity from the moment you come into the world. You're fighting the pressure of gravity pushing you down, and you have to push off of it and wiggle and crawl and stand up and fall down and stand up and fall down. And interestingly, the real centerpiece, I think, at the top of the pyramid of what the human has to be able to manage and move through in order to become and grow into their fullest destiny is their stress response. A stressor is anything that puts pressure on the body or the brain. Okay, so it could be work, finances. It could be a diagnosis like anxiety and depression. It could be relationship oriented. It can be the way you talk to yourself. How you talk to yourself is one of the biggest stressors in life. If you can learn to talk to yourself in a way that is supportive, like a best friend would, if you can learn to, when you make mistakes, to brush the dirt off of your shoulders and off of yourself, pick yourself up and go, it's not done until I give up. I'm so proud of me for going for it and trying. Good job. You start to, Dr. Phil looked at me one day and he said, Anthony, you're going to have to learn to give yourself what you wish you would have gotten from all the people that were there to love you and support you. So I started to say to myself, what would I say to my kid? What would I say to my best friend if they were going through something difficult? And I started talking to myself that way. And we don't have an overconfidence problem. There's a lot of people that run their ego and that have a real haughty point of view, but those are usually the most insecure of us, that put up a facade. But the truth is that we don't have an overconfidence problem. We have an underconfidence problem. We don't feel worthy. And I believe, this is just a firm belief in me that I've adopted, and I have a test for beliefs as to whether you ought to or ought to not adopt a belief. And my test is it helpful? Is this belief helpful to me? And if it's not, then I think it's worthy of taking a hard look at and picking it apart and finding something that might be healthy, that might help me in some way. And so, one of the things that I do is I make sure that the ways that I think and believe about myself are going to be helpful. And I think that by you being here on earth, you are a part of of God's divine creation. And you are worthy inherently just by your presence here. That your consciousness, your aliveness, you are a spark of the divine. And by that, in and of itself, you are worthy. And I think the things that you want, the desires of your heart, I think that's destiny. I think that it might not be that you get it. And I haven't gotten everything that I've ever wanted and everything that I've wanted to go for. But by pursuing it, by going after it, you become what you're destined to be. It's not about the destination. It's about what you become along the way.
That is awesome. Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's kind of, I was going to ask about how to deal with depression and stress and anxiety. I mean, that's, I think, kind of the answer, right? Like to talk to yourself in a different way. And then before
that's definitely one.
Would you kind of push the microphone a little bit? Yeah, that's fine. Perfect.
That's definitely one, okay? And so how you talk to yourself matters. But look, the body only has one arousal mechanism. It's the sympathetic arousal of the autonomic nervous system. Doesn't matter if you're excited or if you're scared.
Is that the dopamine you're talking about?
Well, dopamine is a chemical that's metabolized in the brain that makes you, it's like a reward chemical. It makes you feel good. It makes you feel happy. Okay? But what I'm talking about here is the stress response.
Okay.
All right? When you are, let's say that you are walking through a dark alley and somebody jumps from behind you and puts a cold blade to your neck, okay? Your sympathetic arousal network is going off. Let's say that you just looked at your ticket and you were part of that big lottery,
Mega Ball, something.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And you just won that energy, that wired sensation is sympathetic arousal.
Okay.
You know what else is? Anxiety, sitting in bumper to bumper traffic and getting angst when your girlfriend or wife says something to you that pokes you like a hot iron on your ribs, and you go and you either shut down emotionally, or you want to lash out. That's sympathetic arousal of the autonomic nervous system. And when we live in a very overly stressed environment, and the stress response is purposeful because it was created so that we could flee prey.
What do you mean?
Like if you're walking through the woods and a bear comes up to you, it triggers your stress response so that the blood rushes to your major muscle groups, your pupils dilate, your sweat goes to palms, feet, and areas of the body so you can climb rocks. It flows away from digestion It flows away from the prefrontal cortex where you logic and reason, and it flows into the areas where you can either run or fight, or like a rabbit, close in to play dead.
Right.
Okay? But that's happening, instead of that happening in the woods while you're being chased by a bear, it's happening because you're late for work.
Yeah.
It's happening because your kid has asked you the same question 18 times in a row. It's happening because you have a list of to-dos that doesn't match up with the amount of time that you have to do them. It's ordinary life, but instead of us having an adaptation to where we are managing those things without the stress response, because it's there to help us if our life is in threat, if we're being threatened by a predator. But we're 99% of the time at this point, we're safe.
Right.
99% of the time. I tell people, even when anxiety is undirected fear.
Yeah.
It's like being fearful without anything to really be fearful about.
Right.
Because you're trapped in a sympathetic arousal. Well, the other limb of that nervous system is called the parasympathetic. Its job is to restore, to rest. It's the rest and digest limb of the autonomic nervous system. One is the arousal, one is rest and digest. And so, like for instance, we talked about Hazel. I have a sweet little pup named Star, okay? And when somebody rings our doorbell, no matter how hard I've tried to train her out of this, she acts like she's paid to be our guard dog, and she runs fiercely to the door, just loud and big barks and this whole thing, right? Yeah. And that's sympathetic arousal. 30 seconds later, she's asleep by the couch because her parasympathetic nervous system has been entrained to engage immediately after a stress environment circumstance. And so immediately she goes into rest and digest and she falls asleep. But we get stressed and then stressed again and stressed again and stressed again to where we are living in a constant and consistent stress response.
So what do you suggest to the human to do?
You have to entrain your parasympathetic nervous system. You have to entrain your parasympathetic nervous system to become responsive. And it's about rebalancing back into homeostasis.
So in other words, like if you get stressed, like let's say some kid asks you 18-time question, you get stressed. What's that look like?
Okay. First thing, oftentimes I said that the answers are simple. And on its face, you would discount it. And you've probably heard it a million times in your life.
Right.
But let me tell you the way Dr. Lawless taught me. Short, shallow breaths signals to the brain and the body that a threat exists. Long, slow, deep breaths signals to the brain and the body that you are safe and the coast is clear. Okay, so now go back to that primal response. When you are triggered into a stress response, that means that your body and brain is reacting as if it's under threat, as if it's being threatened, like not threatened like verbally, like physically threatened.
Yeah.
Okay? So what you have to do is signal to your brain and body that you're safe. So the number one best tool that I implement is breathing. But I have to teach people how to breathe because we do it our entire life without thinking about it. But for the most part, people breathe short and shallow chest breaths and quick.
Yeah.
But you have to learn how to breathe like an opera singer. You have to do a diaphragmatic breath. You have to breathe down into the belly, let the belly expand. Then you breathe up into the chest and shoulders. The chest expands, the shoulders rise. And then you don't just let it all out quickly. You let it out long and slow like you're fogging a mirror.
It does relax me.
No doubt. In that out breath, your parasympathetic limb of the autonomic nervous system is engaging. And so and it takes a little effort. There's a little bit of an arousal breathing in. So you have to breathe in You can feel the relaxing sensation just in one breath. And then when you put 2, 3, 4 together, 5, 10, 20, now you're really entraining that parasympathetic limb of the autonomic nervous system. Now, we also talked about self-talk. How you talk to yourself engages your stress response. It's not what's happening. It's not what's happening that creates the problem for you in your life.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
It's your reaction to what's happening. Two people can have the same exact circumstances happen in their life.
Yeah, that is very true.
One person excels, grows from it, becomes something that we would all look at and go, yay, that person is so awesome.
Right.
And the other person dissolves, swirls the drain.
It's, I mean, like a negative talk goes negative and then positive goes positive.
You bet.
Yeah.
What you say to yourself about what's going on in your life can reduce your stress by 50% right there. Just what you're saying. We have a tendency to catastrophize. Oh my gosh, the most horrible thing happened to me today. It was terrible. This is going on in my life, and this is going on, and we talk about it, and like we forget that like there's children at the burn unit in the hospital right now that are having to get wrapped and unwrapped twice a day and dipped into a saline solution. We forget that we are blessed to have the use of our limbs and our voice and our body. You know, let me tell you what happened to me is that really, when I was 14 years old, my sister Mandy was driving home from work on a country road, a responsible teenager pulling her weight. She was a beautiful cheerleader, the leader of the drama club at our small town school, beloved by friends and family, sang at church. She was driving home on a night after it had snowed, but it had all melted away. She's driving. She hits a spot of black ice. Her car spins out of control. She flies off an 8-foot ravine and wraps her car sideways around a tree.
Yeah.
She is in a comatose state. They tell us that she most likely won't live. But she survives.
Oh, good.
She's in a coma in a hospital for almost 3 months.
Wow.
They say she's going to be in a vegetated state for the rest of her life. There's nothing left we can do. I lived with a single mom in a very small house, very humble home in small town Jones, Oklahoma. So the only place where my sister could even fit with a hospital bed was up the street at my grandparents' house. So in my grandparents' living room, they brought my sister with all the equipment and set her up there. And she just laid there in a coma. And I was 14 years old, and frankly, I was a mess. And I was a mess before then. I sucked my fingers like this and held a stuffed animal to my face until I was almost 13 years old. We didn't talk about mental health. Nobody knew about mental health in my family. I bit my fingernails till they bled. I mostly remember being scared as a kid. That's my memories mostly involve feeling scared about something. Here I am, my sister has this truly catastrophic, life-changing event. There's nothing anybody can do. And I'm devastated. I had to live with a friend while she was at the hospital because my family was my mom and dad, who were divorced and not together, they lived in the parking lot at the hospital just to be so. And I'm glad that they did. And all the focus was on my sister, but I was dealing with probably survivor's guilt. I was dealing with a lot of depression, anxiety, a lot of undiagnosed issues like probably ADD and a lot of other things.
Yeah.
But I also didn't have there was no attention to me. Everybody was focused somewhere else. So I was just kind of flailing about. One day, my sister, on this bed in my grandparents' living room with breathing equipment and all of these machineries around her, she opened her eyes. And she started the long and treacherous journey of coming out of the coma, but it was not a movie story. It was not like she woke up one day and said, "Hey everybody, I'm back." It was she had to relearn how to move every single part of her body. She couldn't do anything. She couldn't talk. She had to relearn to talk. She had to relearn everything, every little part. And it was about 6 months after the accident, and I was sitting and I was holding her hand next to her in her hospital bed. And she looked over at me, and her eyes met mine, and it was like she like stared into my soul. And I'll never forget this moment, because this is a really changing moment in my life. Her vocal cords had been cut by the breathing tube, the tracheotomy that they had to place there, so she could barely maneuver her voice. And she looked over at me and she said, "Don't lose your life too." And it was like it mustered everything in her body and brain to be able to say this to me. And these are the first words I ever remember her saying to me since the accident.
Damn.
And they rang in me like a toll bell. And something clicked. And I said, who am I to have this full and able body that I can walk, I can talk, I can run, jump, the freedom to breathe on my own, the freedom to do really anything that I want to do. And yet here I sit, a prisoner of these insecurities and fears. I'm on the sidelines of my own life.
Yeah.
I'd never really done anything. I'd never really gone for anything. My sister was the star of the family. I was kind of like her little brother.
Right.
And I made a deal with myself and with her, and if there was a God, with God, that from that moment on I was going to make the absolute most of every inch of my ability. And I did. That's what I did. And I changed. And it wasn't easy, and it took time, and it took effort, and it took consistency. But I signed up for clubs at school. I got involved in athletics. I got involved at church. I got involved in my own life. I jumped into my own life with both feet. I dove in. And I think that's what we really need to do in our lives. We sit so much of our life on the sideline, wondering, thinking, that's not for me. It can't happen for me. But I'll tell you right now, you have no idea what you're capable of. My sister's accident happened when I was a freshman in high school, and I had no idea that I had an ounce of athletic ability. But I got involved and I started doing things. I started playing things, and not just like sort of playing. I mean, going at it with a full-hearted entrance into my life. And as a sophomore, I became a state champion in the long jump. I had no idea that I had that. It was dormant. It was a dormant ability that I had no idea until I gave myself the opportunity to tap into it. And I'm not special. I promise you, every single person has dormant abilities that they have no idea that they can do, that they're capable of. But we have to give ourselves the opportunity to go for it. And life is not without risk. You have to take the risk to go for what you want. And I'm not saying that you're going to get what you want every time. I've gone for things that I've wanted and I haven't made it. And those have been the greatest lessons of my life. Those have been my greatest learning opportunities. I always say you either win or you learn.
You learn, yeah.
There's no such thing as losing. Losing is when you quit.
Yeah.
Losing is when you quit. And I don't mean changing directions. That's not, if you're knocking on a door and it's closed and it's locked up and you stand there crying at the door, banging on it, telling it to open, you're wasting time. If a door is closed and it's not opening and it doesn't seem like there is an opening, click and move. Go to another direction. Find some other avenue. Find some other direction to go. There's always another way. There's always another route that you can take. And you had talked earlier about dopamine.
Yeah.
And depression, right? Because oftentimes we get stuck in a downward spiral of thinking and inertia takes place. A body at rest tends to stay at rest. And the hardest thing to overcome in physics is inertia. Forward movement, getting some kind of momentum.
Right.
And so it's that way if you're in that place, is that the things that are going to make you feel better are going to take action. You behave your way to success.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in the upward spiral too, as much as a downward spiral.
That's right.
Yeah. So you thinking that you're saying that dopamine is making people happy? Like, well, how do you define happiness?
Okay, you have these two little almond-shaped centers behind the eyes in the brain called nucleus accumbens. These nucleus accumbens metabolize serotonin, dopamine, and these feel-good chemicals, but we have to do something to activate those. And there's certain things that do activate them, like, for instance, serotonin. You petting your dog and cuddling up with your dog, that activates serotonin. We go heart to heart, that beautiful human symbol of a hug, which is where I put my most precious organ up against your most precious organ, and we circle our arms around each other. That triggers a chemistry in the brain that creates serotonin. When you give love, like I always tell people, if you want to feel love, give love. Whatever it is you want to feel, give it. Go find a way to give it at the Boys and Girls Club, volunteering, a friend in need, whatever. Give of yourself and you will get back what it is that you hope to feel. But you can do things that activate these chemicals. For instance, like, did you know dancing and moving rhythmically to music is probably one of the healthiest things that you could do for your brain and body?
No, I didn't know that.
It activates the chemistries that creates joy. And we used to do this. We were tribal people around campfires every night, beating on drums and playing music and dancing and singing and humming. These things are like some of the simplest things you can do, but they're anti-stress. They decrease stress response. Dancing, moving rhythmically to music, yoga, tai chi, going out and working out, getting physical, going on a walk in nature. These things activate the chemicals that create and produce the stimulation of joy, peace, and wellness. But it doesn't just happen like you go take 3 steps and you go, oh, I feel really great now. It takes effort and consistency. And that's the path.
So to become happy takes effort and consistency.
I think so. And you get little tastes along the way. And especially, I guarantee you, if you put on your favorite song, put headphones on, turn the lights out in your room, and you dance like a wild idiot.
That sounds pretty good.
Okay?
Yeah.
I promise you that at the end of that song, you'll feel 2 things.
Right.
Tired, like, whew, wow, that was and you'll feel good.
Yeah.
You'll feel it's a good tired.
Yeah.
And you'll go, wow, I helped Dr. Lawless write his latest book, Healing Rhythms to Reset Wellness. I did all the research for it. And it was fascinating as I dove in to find out how frequency and rhythm affect the brain and the body, and how music stimulates the brain, and how rhythms, both moving rhythmically, rhythms in sound, rhythms in nature, how they profoundly affect our human experience. And it's really fascinating. Even your bones are creating a certain frequency. And realistically, inside of our bones, we produce over 40% of the white blood cells that fight off virus and disease. And so you can stimulate your immune system. You can, like, this was one of the most difficult things I think about dealing with the pandemic. And I was just like shaking my head and I couldn't believe that nobody was talking fiercely about how to boost your immune system.
Through mental health?
Through mental health, through physical exercise, through walking in nature, through the activation of the immunities. You can do systematic relaxation, learning how to relax your mind and body. Okay, number one, I teach people that. That is one of the greatest tools to de-stress, to boost your immune system. The power of imagery. Realizing that everything that has been created in this world that is not a product of nature itself came from somebody or some group of people's imagination. And we write that off as child's play. But you can literally, if you close your eyes right now while you're listening to this, okay? If you close your eyes and imagine yourself walking through your kitchen. You go to your kitchen refrigerator, you open the door, you feel that cold burst of air come towards you. And you see a jar of pickles. You reach in, you touch that cold jar of pickles in your hand. You twist the lid, you hear that pop. You open it up, you smell it, the vinegar. You reach in, you feel that cold wetness, the texture of the pickle. You grab a pickle, you bring it up, put the pickle in your mouth, take a bite of it, feel the crunch. Feel the juices. Yosuke, what happened inside your mouth?
It's I can kind of taste it. Like it melts it, yeah?
You feel the saliva?
Yeah.
Did your mouth start to water?
Yeah, kind of.
You literally had a physiological response to an imagined experience.
Yeah.
We learned this stuff through Olympic athletes, professional athletes, NASA astronauts, and elite military who have the funds and the impetus to learn about what drives our abilities. And we find that when you hook up an Olympic athlete to biofeedback equipment and you have them visualize going through the event, that the muscles fire at the exact same pattern and rate as they would if they were actually running the event.
Huh.
You can literally build muscle memory just by using your imagination. And there is a lot of research on this. And so you can use, like, for instance, one of the things that I have on my website is imagery programs where, like, one of the things that I teach people how to do is imagine themselves in an environment that will engage their parasympathetic nervous system. And you can get that on my website. And number one, it's an awesome experience. I created the music for it also because I was a musician.
Rhythm, yeah.
One of my things that I didn't quite make it,
Yeah.
I wanted to be a rock star.
That's cool.
Okay?
Yeah.
So I had a rock band.
Yeah.
I sang and played guitar. I played the Roxy, the Whiskey A Go-Go, the Viper Room, all these Sunset Strip spots. We had a regular show at the Roxy and the Whiskey A Go-Go for a long time. I was signed with Vagrant, indie label, and then there was a time when the Killers had just gotten signed to Island Def Jam, and they were coming to our rehearsal space. The guy that had just signed them, and we were like really about to go,
Right.
and. But I was I was in that space where it was like, go for it, go for it, go for it. Like I had landed after my sister's thing, right? Which was like, become a lawyer, become a rock star, just like do whatever it is that you want to go for.
Right.
But sometimes going for those things and failing at it, like I didn't become a rock star. My band broke up. I had a long-term relationship with an actress at that time that we broke up, and I kind of hit a real down spot.
Yeah.
And it was through that down spot that I found what I was meant to do with my life. And so, like, to me, it's like, thank God I failed at that.
Yeah, also, like, if you didn't do it, you will ever regret it. You haven't done it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And probably the things that we go for that we don't make it in might have been what would take us down a path to destruction.
Yeah, for sure.
And so probably if I would have done that, I probably would have blown my life away in some way as an egotistical rock star.
Yeah.
And because that happened, and I had to kind of regroup and refine myself, and that's when Dr. Lawless really kind of dug into me, and Dr. Phil dug into me and really helped me come out of that space, where I had thought I had found some traction after my sister's accident, but then it all went away, and I felt like I did then, except worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I had to refine my way and refine who I was and what I was going to be about. And it was through that process that I came into being a life coach and a mental health professional.
That's awesome. I was curious because of the current your job is life coach and a mental health professional, but also before you were working as a resource director in Dr.Phil. And then I believe in the strongly about you are who you surround yourself with, like average of 5 people you surround yourself with. And then whenever you're talking about negative talk and the positive talk, I think the environment you're in, if it's positive, right, and then like you can become more happier. I believe strongly about the positive vibes and all that kind of stuff. I was curious because of Dr. Phil shows and then life coaching stuff, right? People come to you as like, oh, I have a problem. And so probably a lot of stuff is negative stuff, right? Then you kind of surround yourself with negative atmosphere. Whenever intervention happens, that's not happy talk, right? It's kind of like a serious talk. How do you find yourself happiness while you're doing it? Or like how do you deal with the circumstances because it's your job to deal with those people like long time throughout the day, right? So how do you deal with those like a negative environment but still finds happiness, if that my question makes sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I'm a man on a mission. It's like I said earlier, Viktor Frankl, he said that suffering ceases to be suffering at the point in which it finds purpose and meaning. And we tend to identify things as good or bad and right and wrong, but I just look at everything as it is. And so your situation in life, although it might be creating a lot of suffering, I know that also within that suffering is the seed for everything that you've ever wanted in your life. So it's not just suffering that I'm dealing with. It's the pathway to you becoming who you're destined to be. And so when I come into, about half of my practice is relationships, and I work with couples. And I love working with couples. And the reason why relationship is so powerful is because I think every part of life is relationship, not just you and other people. You're in a relationship with your anxiety. You're in a relationship with the food you eat. You're in a relationship with every aspect of your living experience. All of life is relationship dynamics, but it becomes crystal clear when you deal with 2 people.
Yeah.
You deal with a relationship. And so to me, it's a privilege. It's an honor that somebody entrusts sitting across from me and talking to me about things that are real and important to them. And I don't take that lightly. And I engage in it with a pure intention of their best interest at heart and what they can see and do and think and believe that could shape the experience of those circumstances. Because when, like what happened with my sister, I went on a mission to find out how do you deal with whatever life throws your way. Because I'm not one of these positive psych gurus that thinks that you can just think positively and get your way out of any situation. What if you are dealing with something that can't be changed? Some physical issue. You've lost both your legs. You have a relationship dysfunction that you are stuck in and have no idea what to do. What do you do at that point? And it's a dynamic process. All of life is relationship dynamics. Like you have H2 that falls in love with an O, and they have such an attractive force, which maybe this is why love is such a powerful force. Maybe that's love. Maybe the covalent bond that H2 and O share to become water, maybe that could be considered love. I don't know. But they're so attracted to each other that they can't help it.
Right.
And they become water. So this H2, this gas, and this O2, they come together. And because of the dynamic between those two elements, those two chemistries, they become something totally different. And I think that's the way we are with all elements of our life. You have a relationship with your job, with the things. You have a relationship with how you get up in the morning. You have a relationship with the sequence of activities you do to prepare yourself for work in the morning. You have a relationship with each physical object that you interact with, how you interact with it. It's always in the how, I think. The what is less important than the how. The what you do is less important than the how you do it.
Yeah. It's same thing as it's not important to say what you say, it's how you say it kind of too.
No doubt. You can say what you want to say, usually, if it's not like terroristic or indulging some racist or gender bias thought that has no basis in anything other than your biases. You can pretty much say what you want to say if you can say it in a way that is offered with an intention that is not to do harm. And I take that. The Hippocratic Oath, first part of it is to do no harm. And I take that approach. I try to help people with our emotions dictate so much of our life experience, how we feel. And I have 3 rules with emotions. Number 1 is you don't harm yourself in an emotional state. Number 2 is you don't harm other people with words or actions. And number 3, you don't harm physical property. I teach my kids this. This is what my rules are for my girls in dealing with their emotions. But emotions are energy in motion. They seek to be expressed. They want to be acknowledged and heard. They want to be, the energy has to move. And if you repress it or resist it, it's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. Eventually it's going to pop up, and probably in the most inopportune time, where you're going to create destruction in your relationships, self-destruction. Right. And so the best thing you can do is sing about it, write about it, do a handstand, go for a run, play a sport with it, draw a picture with it. Just get the emotion to come up and come out and let it move through you. And then you make a choice. Now, I talked about Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning, and Dr. Phil, that was one of the primary books that he asked me to read in my growth path. And this is a guy who survived the Nazi concentration camps, and he was a psychiatrist, and he studied how some people survive and how some people don't, and what's the difference, and what created the pathway for those that survived. And he says that the last of the human freedoms, the last thing, they can take your name, they can shave your hair off of you, they can make you dig ditches, they can make you have frostbite on your limbs and work the cold, they can feed you barely anything. But the last of the human freedoms is to choose your attitude, to choose your way, your way. And I think that bridges the gap between what happens and what you say or do. There is a space. If you can take a breath or 3 or 10 between something that happens and what you say and do about it, and you create that space, therein lies your growth and your freedom. Because if you can't create space between what's happening and how you respond to it, then you are a prisoner of your circumstances. You're like a pinball being bounced around inside a pinball machine with no control over the destiny of your life. But if in your circumstances, in each circumstance, if you can create space and really soothe the stress response and find a way to calm and center and make a choice, now you create your own destiny.
Huh. I never thought of that way. I think that's a very interesting thought.
That's true freedom. That's
Yeah.
why I call my practice Set You Free, because we're trying to relinquish the handcuffs that have you locked into your conditioned responses. We all learned about Pavlov's dogs, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody knows Pavlov's dogs, the conditioned response. Pavlov, the famous psychologist that would ring a bell and feed the dog, and they'd salivate, and then soon enough, all he had to do was ring the bell and the dog would salivate. Mm-hmm. That's a conditioned response. Mm-hmm. And anthropologists will tell you that you don't see the world as it is. You see the world through the eyes of your cultural conditioning. You've been conditioned by your family culture first, mm-hmm. the small unit of people that surrounded you from birth till 2 or 3, 4. Then you start to bridge out to a larger culture, which has to do with your preschool and your school. And then you bridge out to a larger culture, and all that time you're being conditioned. Your nervous system is being conditioned. How you choose and what you do, you're learning. You're getting ingrained patterns of responding to certain stimuli, to certain situations and people. And then we become adults. And then we walk through life with that cultural conditioning, which is a prison that we don't see the bars of. We don't see the handcuffs. And so we have to have the ability to break free from that conditioning and start to analyze our thoughts and beliefs and choose what we want to stand with. Choose what's helpful. Choose what's going to work for me and not against me. And you can start to adapt, which is the human's greatest ability. The reason why we are the greatest survivors on earth is not because we're the strongest or the fastest. We don't even have the biggest brains. It's because we have the uncanny ability to adapt to nearly almost any environment. And we don't do it like the bear adapted by growing fur on its back to stay warm. We adapt internally in the mind so that we created a house so that we could be warm. We're creators.
What animal has the biggest brain?
Elephants, whales.
Oh, okay. I mean, they're big too. Yeah. But I was wondering, so when we are on the phone, you were talking about, there is a couple like a personal coach or mental health professional, like they went to seminar for 1 weekend, right? Or then like you're different because of all the research and the credential. For people who are listening to it, and then people who are interested in getting help for the mental health professional or like a life coach, how can they judge that life coach or mental health professional? Like, how can they get the good one? Like, what do you recommend?
Well, number one, you can go to anthonyhaskins.com.
For sure.
But I kid. But you just do your research, okay?
Yeah. What should they look for? You
get online and you start reading. You start asking people questions, okay? And I think that there's an energy at play. There's a force of God or the universe that guides you towards those things that are going to work for you. But you have to step out and start the process. And so you have to start talking to people. You have to start researching. And it's not necessarily about credentials. It's not necessarily about the degrees that people hang on their wall. There's a lot of people that can help you that may not be credentialed at all. I don't know. But what I think you have to do is be willing to get into connection with some avenue of help, and you start talking to people and asking them, and you start researching online, and then you take some steps. And I think that you will eventually land where you need to be, because one thing leads to another. I love the old Zen proverb, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step.
True.
And so you take a step and you keep taking one step, and you will eventually find what you're looking for.
That makes sense. The reason I have this podcast is that people who are listening to it, or also myself, is like, like some people are like lost in figuring out the professional careers and all that kind of stuff. But also I do believe that I might not be, have a credential to teach entire world or career or whatever. But I am good enough to teach myself 5 years ago myself. So I like asking every guest that question: what would be the advice you give yourself 5 years ago yourself? It would be 2017.
That's a great question. I think what I would say to myself is relax. Don't rush it.
What were you doing in 2017?
I was trying very hard. I was trying very hard. And I have come to a place where at this point in my life, I work smarter, not harder. And I think that you can get what you want without breaking yourself on the way. And that life is as much of an energy game as it is an effort game. Sometimes we mistake activity with productivity. And I'll see somebody searching and just trying to find something and trying to get that thing. And what they need to do is go for a walk in the park. What they need to do is meet with a friend and enjoy some time. And then they come back to it and boom, it shows up almost like magic, because you get into a different field of intention where you almost draw to you what you're looking for. Whereas before you were caught up in the field of resistance, because it's like, I can't find it. Oh, I got to get this thing. I've got to do this thing. I've got to get it. I've got to get it. I've got to get it. I told you I think what happened to me when my life kind of went when my band broke up and that whole situation, because I was just like, I was going to get what I wanted no matter what I had to do. And I was just going to work and work. I was like working all day. And then I was rehearsing till almost midnight every single day of the week. And then I was playing shows on the weekends. And I was just running myself absolutely ragged. And now I sit back. I enjoy people. I enjoy my life. I work with a focus on the thing that I'm working on. I align priorities. I make a very firm list of priorities, and nothing is more important than my family. I don't believe there's anything I will ever do more important than raising my two daughters to inherit the earth. I think our attention and focus on the young people has to be at the top of the list.
That is awesome.
They're carrying the world forward, and we don't have all the answers. They do. They're going to figure it out. So I want to pour into them. Number one, my wife. She's my priority. I want to be there for her. I want to make her happy. I want to be good to her. I want to make sure that my reactions to her are from a place of care and love. And then I'm devoted to my work. The people that see me, like I said, I do not take that lightly. I put my heart and my soul into what I do. And that's my priority. And then I block off times. I have an online course that's about to launch. It's called Set You Free. Okay, it's going to be, check my website at anthonyhaskins.com. It'll be there soon. I have some kind of lead ups for it. You can put your email address, because not everybody can see me face to face. I mean, I only have so much time, right?
Yeah.
And I literally have clients from California to Florida. I'm so blessed. People have found me through the Dr. Phil show. People have found me through referrals and talking about me. I do almost no advertising, but people find me, and so I stay very busy. But there's always, like, it seems like the right person comes just as somebody's leaving. And it's like somebody that I feel really called to help, and somebody else it's like time for them to fly.
Yeah.
And I don't try to keep people for 10 years working with me. It's like I want them to come, get what they need, and then go. Life is your teacher. Life is your best teacher, And so that's kind of my approach. And I stay on mission and stay with my priorities, and I work what's most important first, always.
That is awesome. What about 5 years? How do you see yourself in 5 years?
Okay. Oh, wow. In 5 years, my daughters will, at that point, both be, well, one will be in high school still. The other will probably be in college. I'll probably have a fully gray beard at that point.
Looks nice.
I see myself finding even more stability, even more of a steadfast nature. I think of myself like a tree. And as I grow more rings, I become more rooted into the earth, more stable. And as I become more stable and more rooted into the earth, I provide a bigger and wider shelter and home for creatures and things to find comfort underneath the shade of my branches and to find to nest in. And I hope to be providing that kind of a sensation to those that enter into my sphere of influence. And I hope to be a force for betterment for especially the people of Oklahoma, because it's no accident that I'm here. Like, we came back here because I felt like my wife always said, the people I meet from Oklahoma, they're like good people. They're like genuine, She was born in Vegas, grew up in Las Vegas. And then I met her in California. She was a yoga teacher at this studio where I was going to practice yoga, where like Jennifer Aniston went and Zooey Deschanel and like these starlets all went to this place called Hollywood Power Yoga. So of course that's where I went, right? And I could barely touch my toes. And she was a star teacher at this studio. And I have no idea what she saw in me, but I'm glad that she did. And because we're really happy together and a dynamic couple. We've been together for 12 years and going, and it's just so exciting, So I think I see myself as even a more stable and mature version of myself that's able to be a provisionary for those that need some boost, that need a hand up, and that want to get more out of life in whatever way that is. And so I think that's it. I hope to be even more relaxed.
Yeah, I think you can do that in Oklahoma. And then I'm glad, I was fascinated what you told me about, you being working in LA, but your wife wanted to move and all that stuff. And then your priorities and all that kind of stuff, you're doing that. And then I think such a respect, you do what you do for your priority.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And I boomerang that back to you. I just love your entrepreneurial spirit. I love the podcast. I love that you're using your voice and inviting people to come on and add some knowledge and some uplift because we can all learn from each other.
Yeah.
We live in such a special time with the internet and podcasts and the ability to disseminate information and this is how we grow. This is how we become. And so, all due respect to you.
Oh, thank you. Honestly, I learned so much just being here, just I think I have the best seat in the world, getting advice and then from you and everybody, be on the podcast. And then, I think, I do have a last question. This is kind of I was asking my friends and family about like, hey, I have, Anthony come in, like, what do you want to ask? And then they're like, well, the one question they asked me, and it was kind of resonate with me, is like, what was the best takeaway? Or like, what was like one episode or one person, or whenever you're at the Dr. Phil show, what was the biggest takeaway from that show from 18 years?
Okay, that's really easy, and the answer comes very quick. And we dealt with every kind of family dynamic and circumstance that you could imagine. And you don't come to the show unless things have gone in a very wrong direction.
Right.
You have to rise to the level of being a Dr. Phil show guest.
Right.
And so I got to interplay with that kind of problem solving for almost 18 years with Dr. Phil, yes, who's brilliant and is a great leader and has such an awesome perspective in how he goes about solving problems. It's why Oprah loved him so much and worked with him, and then the advisory board, and then all the experts that have come on the show. And I think my biggest takeaway, the biggest lesson of all of it, is that you have the power to create your life.
That's awesome.
You have the power to create the life you want for yourself. And it doesn't mean it's going to look like what you think it's going to look like, but you're never stuck. You always have a choice. There's always an alternate direction, thought, behavior, choice that you can make that will take you down the road and out of whatever hell that you're living in. You have the power to create your life.
Is that kind of what you told yourself whenever you made a decision to move to Oklahoma as well?
Yeah, it is.
Whenever you decide to leave that show, what did Dr. Phil said?
Well, it was a very scary time for me, actually. I had been under his employ for 18 years. It was the first major job I had coming out of law school. And here I was in my 40s. And so the thought of what now and how was, it was terrifying. And because it wasn't just me, I had 2 children and a wife that depended on me. And so that's when I believe, stepped into my mission. And I really sought God, what do you want me to do with my life? I've done all these things. I've had all these experiences. I have all these trainings. I am certified as a life coach. I am a certified clinical hypnotherapist. I have been trained at the University of North Texas in crisis intervention and motivational counseling and interviewing. And I have all this stuff. And I'm a musician and I talk. I go out on stage and I talk. And I'm an athlete. I've been so many different things. I've had so many different ways of identifying. And I really wanted to find out, I didn't want to just be in this profession because I want to tell people what to do. That's such an ego trip. And so it gets old. It's doesn't fuel me. So I wanted to make sure that my motivations were pure in what it is that I wanted to do. And, I had been researching for a book that I am currently writing right now. And it is all about how to manage stress and create the life that you want. And so I just thought, this is what I'm all about. Not only is this what I really want to do, but it's who I am. It's who I've become. It's how I've become. And it felt like there was only one choice to make. And the question at that point then was where? And we felt, my wife and I, like we were being called to Oklahoma with purpose. And so that's why I'm here, and that's what I'm up to.
That's awesome. I mean, like you mentioned a couple of times, but people can find you on AnthonyHaskins.com, right? Any other place that people can find you or promote?
I have my Instagram, which is the Anthony Haskins, and that's my handle. And I really try to put content out that's going to be helpful, and that's my intention. And so I will love to have anybody that finds me on Instagram to come and follow me. I have Facebook profile too. I think people still do a lot of Facebooking. And so like I have my Facebook profile, which is Anthony Haskins. I think you find me there somehow. And then of course my website, and on my website I have some products like relaxation, which entrains the parasympathetic nervous system. I have imagery programming, which you use the power of your imagination and relaxation in the mind to create and cultivate what you want at the nervous system level, at the brain level, and even in career, etc. And I have sound immersions, which is like I took my musicianship and the research and so on that I did with Dr. Lawless and Healing Rhythms to Reset Wellness, and I started producing music tracks for different kinds of things, like for inspiration, for relaxation, for whatever. There's like a ton of them for different purposes that are available. And then, of course, if you want to talk to me, man, I'd love to hear from you. I like talking to people. That's what I do for a living.
That's awesome. Well, I hope I very much enjoyed this conversation. I hope you did too, and
Very
I
much.
hope the listener did too. And then this will be Be Frank podcast episode 9, and then always be frank, and please subscribe and like and comment, and all the Anthony's link credential will be link in the description, and then go to his website, and then learn something. And see you guys next Friday.
Thank you, Yusik.
Thank you. That was not
Okay,
that
let's
was
do that
very
again.
bad.
Hold on, ready?
Yeah,
Life is all about do-overs.
do-overs. Yes.
Here we go. Ready?
Second chances. That was a good.
There we
one.
go.
That was a good one.
You know that, hold on, before we log off, let's give something that everybody can actually use in life.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
This single tip, everyone can actually use in their life. When you give a high five, if you stare at my elbow and I stare at your elbow, we will get a solid high five
All right,
every
try it.
time.
Let's
You
try
ready?
it.
And
Yeah.
you guys try this at home. You ready?
Yeah.
Look at my elbow.
Yeah.
Ready?
Nice.
It works every
It
single
worked.
time.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. That was awesome.